Kathakali literally means story play, where it is derived from the Sanskrit words kartha, or story, and kali, or to play or perform. This is because it consists of the fusion of music, dance, and acting, where the actors themselves would do the dancing and acting, while percussionists and singers who are at the side of the stage would play the music. Kathakali is a type of Indian traditional theater where the story is mainly told through the performer. Its purpose is being the manifestation of humanity in Hinduism and provides beautiful messages to the audience by expressing them only through movements. Yes, this means that none of the actors are actually telling the audience the story through words, like how you would usually see them in Western plays. This is what makes this tradition so unique with its visual appeal.
Significance or purpose. Kathakali reflects the art and culture of the state and area of Kerala, India. The dance drama highlights playfulness. What is this playfulness? In Hinduism, there's a concept that celebrates the creation by the divine. Leela, or the play of the gods, represents the gods' creative activity when creating the universe. The world is seen as a stage of the divine play, so by taking part in this performance, the performers are paying homage to their creators. Our earthly reality becomes the outcome of the divine. It is the manifestation of humanity represented in Hinduism. It's also a way of entertaining, as well as sharing beautiful message about humanity.
So, when did Kathakali theater first begin? Well, actually, we don't know. But we do know that it was fully developed during the late 16th to 17th century. It originated from the state of Kerala, India, where it eventually served as a symbol of art and culture in the state. During the early 17th century, Sanskrit had already lost its popularity. However, there was a form of dance worship called the Krishnatam, which consists of a cycle of 8 dance dramas that are all dedicated to the god Krishna. So, how does this relate to the state of Kerala? Well, Krishnatam performers performed in front of the king of Kerala, Kottaraka Thampuran, which made him into a regular admirer. However, the king of Calicut prevented them from performing for the king of Kerala, which caused him to create his own art of New Age stories, mainly revolving around Lord Rama, who is the main character of the epic Ramayana, which eventually led to the birth of Kathakali. So, what were the main inspirations of Kathakali? Kathakali can be similar to Sanskrit since they both perform stories from the great Hindu epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Mahabharata, which is India's longest epic, tells of a bitter quarrel which developed into a war extermination. The 5 sons of Pandu are unjustly deprived of the ancestral kingdom by their wicked cousins, the Kauravas, and they regain it after a tremendous battle in which all their enemies and most of their friends are slain. It consists of many themes of heroic age, the martial values of bravery, loyalty, and truthfulness, which were encouraged to the men and women of India. This epic had so much impact that many of its tales have been rewritten by many writers who modify them into their plays and poems. The other Indian epic, Ramayana, tells the story of the righteous prince Rama, who was unjustly exiled by his father, Dasharatha, king of Ayodhya. So he, his wife, Sita, and his brother were sent to the forest. However, the demon king of Ceylon, Ravana, captured Sita. Rama then fights Ravana and brings back his wife. The story ends with Rama regaining his ancestral kingdom, yet has to put away Sita, who has lost her ritual purity for residing in the house with another man, even though she was actually completely loyal to him. This epic tells the marvelous story of an almost supernatural hero. It demonstrates the virtues of courage, loyalty, faith, forgiveness, and fellowship. Rama is such an important figure that he is even still worshipped as a god to this day, and his story is a huge part of cultural tradition. We also see the struggle of good and evil when we witness the struggle of the monkey kings, who are Ravana's army, who are being killed by Rama's arrow. These two epics are within many Indian dialects, experiences, sculptures, and art. They were literally everywhere. Because of this, it makes sense that they also had a massive influence on the themes of literature and art. And of course, like everyone else, the king of Kerala was also inspired by these epics, which led to the creation of Kathakali. The epics contain codes of morality, wisdom, and consciousness. This is also the main code of Kathakali. Both epics also narrate the great battles between good and evil and how the former always triumphs over the latter. This is what every Kathakali play consists of. Lastly, the persistence of the epic stories as the recurring theme for the theater had tended to discourage realism. Legends and myths, distortions and exaggerations as they are from real life can hardly lend themselves to realistic treatment without injuring artistic unity and aesthetic property. This relates to Kathakali as the actors only play as anything but human. Kathakali's thematic content is also based on the myths and legends of Bhagavata Purana, which is one of Hinduism's great Puranas. It consists of the stories about Lord Krishna. Krishna appears human-like with blue-colored skin. He was a big symbol of Krishnatam and many other art forms within Kerala flourished due to their devotion to him. Not only was he a symbol of Kathakali, but he also had an influence on the makeup by applying chuti on performers. Chuti, which is made out of a white paste of rice powder and lime juice, bordered by white paper, outlines the face of the actor and draws attention to their inner face and eyes. Additionally, because of chuti, actors must learn how to properly use their facial expressions, adjusting to it, or else it will fall off. Overall, the two epics and Bhagavata Purana had a huge impact on the beginnings of Kathakali, which gave way to its uniqueness of storytelling.
Traditionally, the play would be performed unrehearsed. It would begin around 10 p.m. and last until the following morning until after dawn. Audience members were free to leave, take naps, and even eat during the performances. They usually began and took place in public places, and through the use of drum beats and the lighting of an oil lamp, groups would gather and be moved to the staging area. On-stage text was sung by two singers seated to the side, and actors on stage would speak entirely through movements and gestures and expressions. Currently, performances occur in 3-hour evening blocks, so people don't need to be in the theater all evening. Actors-wise, the actors on stage would begin with their feet parallel and shoulder width, knees bent outward, lower back bent inwards towards their belly, and their arms stretched wide. They would speak entirely through hand gestures or mudras, facial expressions, rasas, and body movements. And there are 24 basic mudras that they would have to learn. The first actors were Nayars. They were a particular Hindu caste, many of who were practitioners of Kaliripayattu, and where many of the original messages of the stories originated from. All of its aesthetic forms, so the way that they would move their arms, legs, bodies, and faces, were based on Katiyatam. On-stage vocalists would deliver the entire dramatic text in a unique form of singing called sopanam, and express brava was the actor's main point to achieve, where they could express the inner state of their character through their movements.
As you can see with many of the pictures and videos we have already provided, many of the actors are wearing dazzling makeup and costumes. But what do they all represent? And what is the reason for them to look that way? Well, first, let's dive into how makeup distinguishes each character type. There are 7 types of characters within Kathakali. There is green, or Paka, which represents the gods, epic heroes, and nobles. They are upright, moral, and full of calm inner poise. They have green facial paint, with chuti bordering their lower half of their face. They also have mark of Vishnu, which is often applied on the forehead with red and black marks upon a yellow base. It is composed of rice paste. Lastly, their eyes are framed by underlying the eyebrows and lower eyelids with a soft black pigment, which extends to the sides of their face. Ripe, or Payupu, represents the gods of Balarama, Bama, Shiva, and Surya. It is similar to Paka, except their face are the color orange and red instead of green. Knife, or Kati, are high-born characters like kings, who have villainy or arrogance. Just like Paka, their faces are green. However, they have red mustaches and eyebrows, which are framed by white rice paste. Additionally, 2 white bulbous extensions are added on their nose and foreheads. An example of this is Ravana. Velatati, or Whitebeard, is known to be the divine type. They have red, white, and black patterns painted on their face, a white beard, which is painted or worn on the cheeks, and a small patch of green paint on the nose, suggesting his pious nature. The Monkey King, Hanuman, who is the commander of Ravana's monkey army, is an example of this character type. Redbeards, or Kurvanatati, are evil or vicious characters. Their eyes are framed by black bands, have a white mustache extending the ears, have lips painted black, giving them a ferocious mouth, have larger nose and forehead in order to look larger than knife characters, and wear a red crown, with red paint around its borders. Blackbeards, or Kuratatati, are evil schemers who are associated with the forest. They are similar to the red beard type, and the lower part of their face is black. There are also character types based on facial makeup. Black makeup, or Kari, are demonesses. They also have patches of red outlined in white rice paste. Radiant shiny makeup, or Menuku, are used for virtuous heroines like Sita and pure males or noble men. This makeup consists of warm yellow-orange paint, creating a glow effect. Lastly, there are special or Tepu characters, who are the ones that did not fit within all of the character types already mentioned. Makeup has been used for animal characters like birds, and even used to signal a transformation like from superhuman to animal.
Okay, so this is where it gets very interesting and a little complicated. In the traditional stories, there are different types of characters and roles. The characters are divided into the Sattvika, Rajasika, and Tamasika categories. Within the Savatika were the Pacha, Kirita, and Krishna characters. Pacha were gods, epic heroes, noblemen. They were heroic, generous, and refined characters, and they had green as their main color. Green on their face, white around the border, and costumes that reflected that. The Kati groups were characters who were anti-heroes, highborn characters who have villainy or arrogance, who, depending on the needs of the story, would either be the antagonist or someone who needs to have their perspective changed. In this Kati group, sometimes they were great warriors and scholars. They had mustaches and small knobs on the tip of their nose and their forehead. The Kari group usually represented demonesses or evil characters. They wore black makeup and black clothing, and they were usually dressed up in a costume of a hunter or a dweller. Minuku were the radiant characters. They were bright, and their face makeup and clothing reflected that. They were usually spiritual characters or virtuous heroines. Thadi, or Velatadi, were the divine type. They would wear white beards. And the bearded characters, of which there are a few, are all under the label tati with a different word in front representing what type they were. So a couple of those additional characters would be Kuvana tati, which wore red beards and were evil and vicious in characterization. Karuta tati, Blackbeard, evil schemers, different from the Kari characters. And Payupu, they were gods and were made to seem greater than normal citizens, greater than the rest of the characters.
Now let's discuss about costumes. The costume becomes an organic part of the actor who uses it to achieve amazing dynamic effects. It makes his own body look larger or smaller and can efficiently express the locale of action, the protagonist's situation, and his emotional reactions to the events. Costumes are so significant to Kathakali performance that they can even serve as a prop. They take up half of the male actor's body, consisting of a large ball-shaped skirt, making it look like the actor is caged within it. Under the skirt, there is a second skirt that is shorter and shaped like a tutu. This skirt supports the outer skirt shape. Since the actor's knees are wide apart and bent, the skirt is kept open so that whenever the actor moves, the skirt will also move gracefully. The actor uses the skirt to symbolize the movement of many things, from a girl walking to ocean waves. He also wears a blouse covering his upper body. Depending on the role, the blouse would most likely be white, and it is ornamented with multicolored ribbons and large scarves, which are attached to small bell-shaped mirrors. He also has golden epaulets, which widens his shoulders. The neck and arms are covered with red and green pom-poms, bracelets, and necklaces. His left hand has long silver fingernails, which either signifies him as graceful or fierce. All demon characters have fangs. The actor also wears bulky headdresses. It looks like a cone, which is surrounded by a green and red disc, which forms a halo around his head, which signifies the dehumanization of the actor. The headdresses are usually made out of carved wood and are decorated with many pieces of metal and mirrors, and topped with peacock feathers. Female characters are more simple and realistic. Their costumes consist of a sari, which completely covers the legs, a blouse of the same color as the sari, usually white or pastel, a veil, which covers the head and stops at the shoulders, necklaces and bracelets in moderate quantity. Each character is also given a kandapuv, which is a crushed seed, under each of their eyelids. It does not hurt their eyes, but it irritates them enough for them to turn red and allows them to look more expressive. Lastly, we will discuss the makeup ritual every actor undergoes 3 to 4 hours before showtime. This is when the actors begin to concentrate and meditate in absolute silence while his disciples powder a variety of colored stones for makeup and make the chuti. Also before the ritual begins, the actor massages his face with oil, which allows the makeup to stick onto his face easier. The makeup ritual then occurs within 3 phases. The first phase is done by the actor himself. Seated in a position of Padmasana, with his legs crossed and body erect, he draws a network of lines around his face with a reed. When the makeup artist takes over, he then lays down and concentrates on his breathing rhythmically. In the second phase, the actor is in complete torpor, where he transforms himself into a god or demon. The makeup artist eventually wakes him up, where his gestures are completely different due to his transformation. The makeup artist continues painting on his face and begin adding the chuti to his face. Lastly, the third phase is done by the actor, where he lengthens his eyes all the way to his ears with a white or black paste. His face is also painted with a solid color. His lips are stenciled red with 2 little red dots on each side of his mouth, and distinctive features are added depending on his character type. The crushed seeds are then added to his eyes, and the ritual ends. Costume and makeup are essential to the entirety of the actor's body, as they serve as a metaphor that speaks to our imagination.
Scenery and settings. So this is very interesting. Across Asian cultures, there is a very big emphasis on the dance and the expression. And in some cultures, scenery and settings are more important. In this culture, they weren't. Scenery was next to non existent. Early performances were held in family homes or outside of temple walls. The stages were bare with just a handheld curtain, no scenery, and 4 poles on the stage defined the acting area. Recent performances happen at performance venues and cultural centers to keep the shows alive. Props wise, there were 3 main props or tools that were noticeable and used in these performances. The Thera Setsthila was a curtain held by 2 assistants. We could call them ancient crew members. Traditionally, it was a single colored piece of cloth painted with a lotus flower. Today, it consists of concentric rectangles on very, very bright colors. The Kalivilaku is the lamp, usually made of bronze, and it used coconut oil and cloth wicks that were tightly wound. It would brighten the actors' faces to emphasize their expressions, which was one of the main points of focus for the audience and the main way that the story and the emotions were expressed. During this time, they relied entirely on the use of oil lamps at the front of the stage to light the entire space. They also used that oil lamp to tell the audience to gather and that it was ready for that the show was ready to begin. A stool was used for actors to sit on within the show's context, and usually to indicate the use of a chariot or throne by the height difference. So once an actor got onto the stool, it would show that they were entering the chariot or entering the throne. Okay, sound. Sound is very important because the show does not use normal text, normal speaking. The sound was an integral aspect to the performance. The music was and still is highly rhythmic, resonant, high decibel drum right here, and a idaka, which is a more subdued hourglass-shaped drum used for female characters. The music accompanied the action, emphasized hand gestures, the mudras, and gave a persistent grounding rhythm. It was continuous. The 2 singers at the side of the stage had gong and cymbals to accompany them, and they were responsible for that. So interestingly enough, there were many different symbolizing musical moments. I don't have all of them written, but some of the more interesting ones were the Skelley, which is named differently in different regions, was a percussion concert that began just before the sun set before the performance. The Arangukeli was a precision ritual that preceded the performance, and it would use cymbals and specific drum beats to get the audience ready for the performance. The Melapadam was a percussion concert that showed the type or grade of performance, and it would indicate the beginning of the play by its end.
Acting is a very important component of Kathakali performances since this is how the audience can understand the stories they are witnessing. However, actors tell the story only through their gestures and not their voice. This also means that movement has to be very precise in order for the audience to have a full understanding, which explains why training is very vigorous and takes a long time. Students must be able to master an entire system of hand gestures or mudras and facial gestures or bhavas. In order to master them, they would undergo exercises. They would first undergo the external, where they begin to manifest the physical, mental, and behavioral signs, which will transform their body to adjust to the relationship with the exercises. Then the exercises will become internal, One of the main signs from this transition from the external to the internal is when their master determines how the value, or their wind and energy, comes fully into their practice. The value has to do with their control of inhaling and exhaling, and is spread, awaking, and controlled in 3 ways: the practice of breath control exercises, preparatory body control exercises, and the correct practice of other psychophysical forms like hand and facial gestures. Student training usually begins at the age of 7 or 8. They would train for 8 hours per day, 6 days per week, and all that for the next 6 to 10 years. Once their formal training is complete, they would dance in preliminary dances or play in minor roles. However, they do not reach maturity and mastery of Kathakali until about the age of 40. Training for advanced students begins with the repetition of a rigorous physical regimen of body control exercises and oil massages given by their masters. This makes their bodies more flexible, balanced, and controlled. Either before or after these massages, additional exercises are performed, like suki, which are splits. Every morning, they would have eye exercises. They would sit cross-legged on mats with a lengthened spine and focus their gaze directly ahead. Then their masters would sit in front of them and make their eyes follow their index finger, which moves around in 9 patterns, like ups, downs, and diagonals, and 3 different speeds, which are fast, slow, and medium. Actors also practice their gestures and facial expressions. Kathakali based its language of 24 mudras, which are performed with a single, combined, or mixed hands. They use basic alphabet to literally speak with their hands, and each play approximately interprets 3,000 words per play, including words like when and if. Their bhavas are the manifestations of the character's inner states of being. There are 9 states of bhavas: pleasure or delight, laughter or humor, sorrow, pain, anger, heroism or courage, fear, disgust, wonder, and atonement. At first, each expression is learned through continuous repetition and correction. An example is learning laughter humor. Slightly raise the upper bridge of the nose between the eyes and slightly turn down the outsides of the eyebrows. Keep the eyelids slightly closed and the lips drawn down on each side. Indent the upper lip muscles on the outsides. There are also 9 different motions of the head, 11 ways of casting a glance, 6 motions of the eyebrows, 4 positions of the neck, and 64 movements of the limbs, including feet, toes, heels, ankles, waist, and hips. Once again, it would take 6 to 10 years in order for students to maintain a fuller understanding of facial expressions. As time goes by, the actor understands the encouragement of imagination and becomes what he is symbolizing. For example, if he were to be a lotus, he sees its beauty and smells its fragrance. Mature actors would embody one of the 9 bhavas and take it with his entire body mind and shape his entire body into a flow of energy within his role. He is fully energized whenever he moves. His breathing is connected to his entire body mind by only breathing through his nose. There are also 2 main characteristics an actor must represent: the narrative and the emotional. For example, if the actor imagines himself as a river, his hand indicates mudras with its landscape, like trees, boats, and people. His face, specifically his eyes, continuously look at his hands, expressing the reactions of the character. Then suddenly, his hands tell the appearance of a crocodile. His face then shows the expressions of the character reacting to the crocodile, like terror. His hand eventually tells the end of the story, which is the crocodile being killed, and the actor shows the facial expression of the character while killing the crocodile. Just telling a simple story like this proves that there will be a lot of effort between the actor and the audience to express and understand this whole story only through movements, which explains why many of these plays would take 8 to 10 hours. There were many influential Kathakali actors from recent time, but here are a few. Kanvengal Chaitanya Panikkar was a legendary Kathakali artist from Kerala. He brought innovations to the dance form, especially in decorative moments, and his contributions reported in the development of grammar and costumes in the Kavangal school. He traveled the world due to his performative skills. He had many notable performances, including Hanuman in Kalyana Sugandhikam. Kalamandalam Gopi is known for his distinguished style and outstanding performance capabilities. He also looked well suited for his characters he played, especially his favorite types, Paka and Kati characters. Karakol Severaman revolutionized the portrayal of female roles within Kathakali. He did this since Kathakali only consisted of male actors until the early 1900s, and those who performed as female characters were usually a part of the supporting cast and drew little appreciation. As soon as he emerged within Kathakali theater, it underwent a drastic change. He performed as female characters where the audience had no choice but to acknowledge the power and grace of them due to his great emotional range and charm. He played many characters, including Damayanti from the story Nala and Damayanti, which is found in the Mahabharata. Lastly, Maya Krishna Rao attended the International Center of Kathakali in New Delhi, where she gains a firm foundation of the strong aspects of Kathakali characters by being trained to play strong male roles. Although she does not perform Kathakali, she does incorporate many of its elements within her own works. For example, within her solo's performance, Koldu, she uses occasional Kathakali gestures, facial expressions, and choreographic elements. Kathakali is currently performed in many urban centers in India abroad. However, the future of Kathakali is declining because very few know how to master it, and many who have refuse to teach others about it. Another reasoning is because back then, students would only learn Kathakali and nothing else, which allowed them to become pure art. However, this is not the case anymore because many of these students are not practicing as much due to learning other subjects and not having as rigorous training. From its inspirations from the two epics and Bhagavata Purana, to the beauty of its makeup and costumes, to the rigorous training actors undergo to portray a story only through gestures and expression, all the way to many actors continuously having influence on this very old tradition, it is unfortunate to its decline. However, by just knowing the amount of effort every role and components put into a single Kathakali performance portrays its uniqueness of the beauty of telling messages to the general public through theater.